Well, hey, everybody, it's Kevin Stevenson. You're with me on I Don't Care with, me, Kevin Stevenson. Here we go. Appreciate you coming and joining me on today's episode. Probably time to share the whole name, title of the podcast again. I get questions on it every now and then. So I got to address it. So here we go. I don't care. I've been in healthcare for about 35, 36 years now. Love what I do. I'm passionate about it. Called to do healthcare. When I started doing the podcast, it's hard to believe it's almost 5 years since I started this. Pretty soon into it, I was talking with one of my producers, and he called me late one night. He said, "Kevin, I've got the perfect idea, perfect name for the podcast." I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "I don't care with Kevin Stevenson." I said, "Where did that come from?" He said, "Well, you don't provide direct patient care, right?" And I said, "That's exactly right. And the patients are probably thankful that I don't, seeing that I don't have a clinical bone in my body." And so I said, "You know what? Let's run with it. I like it." And so we've been doing it now, again, for almost 5 years. I don't care with Kevin Stevenson. I appreciate the following that you guys are giving me. Really have enjoyed bringing you some really quality guests over the last 5 years. One of them, I have another quality guest for you today. This is one of my old friends from the Dallas Fort Worth days. Want to introduce to you my good friend Scott Hurst. Scott Hurst is the president and CEO of Patient Physician Network, and just as importantly, he is also a recovering president of the AC of North Texas chapter. Hey, Scott, welcome to I Don't Care.
Hi, Kevin. Glad to be here.
Man, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
How are things in Dallas?
I'd say hot, but that's to be expected in August in Dallas. So busy, but I think that's true for anybody that works in this space right now.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, we were talking a little bit beforehand. You said you're still active in the North Texas chapter. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing and some of the great things that North Texas continues to do in and around healthcare leadership.
I think probably the two areas where I'm most active, I still frequently attend events. In fact, I attended a reception last Thursday where we had kind of a joint reception between ACHE in North Texas and the Healthcare Leaders Association, which is a relatively new startup here in town.
Okay.
But we're always willing to welcome new folks into spaces, I suppose you would say. I'm still active in the mentor-mentee program through ACHE
Right.
North Texas. In fact, I got 2 mentees this year. Like I have time to be doing that. But, I usually check the box saying I'm willing, and they take advantage of me at that point.
Yeah.
And then maybe most importantly, I am active with the development of the ACHE North Texas Foundation. We have secured our 501c3 status and officially set up a foundation by which we can take donations to help folks with their tax planning, but then also support healthcare leadership, provision of healthcare to, worthy organizations, I suppose, and things of that nature. So we're still getting it kind of off the ground, building the website, a lot of emails going back and forth about logos and stuff like that. But the exciting thing, I think, is that it's an opportunity for leaders when they have an ability to do so to donate money, realize the tax benefit from it, but know that they're supporting an organization that they're already a part of and that they already trust.
That's great. That's great. I'm really glad you're still active in the mentorship program. That was one of my prouder moments in North Texas. Us getting that off the ground. I will still say I know it's still probably the top program in all of ACHE. I know when I was president, I'm sure it's the same thing with you. That was probably the topic that I got the most phone calls about.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the sheer size and scale at which we operated. I think at any given point we have somewhere between 60 and 75 mentees that are being addressed by current healthcare leaders in town. So it's a very worthy program.
That's great. Glad to hear that still as successful as it was when I left. Gosh, almost 4.5 years ago now. So, tell me a little bit about what you're doing now at Patient Physician Network.
Sure. So, Patient Physician Network is a clinically integrated IPA, or Independent Practice
Mm-hmm.
Association. Now, that does not mean that we serve beer or anything like that on a regular basis, at least. But there is a robust and healthy commitment to independence here in the Dallas Fort Worth market. There are several very large IPAs. I think by
Mm-hmm.
most counts, we are the second largest. We have 687 providers
Okay.
spaced across 260 some odd offices, or 260 some odd practices, probably
Mm-hmm.
300 offices. Where it gets challenging is we probably have 46 different EHR systems and probably over 200 different revenue cycle management systems.
Okay.
Those two things by themselves are, I think, in large part responsible for some of the most significant challenges facing independent medicine, probably in a generation.
Yeah. Well, okay. Surprisingly, I do have some folks that listen to I Don't Care that aren't really healthcare people. So talk a little bit about, okay, what's a clinically integrated IPA? What do you do as PPN? How do you help these physicians maintain their viability?
So that's a great question. I think the simplest way I've ever found to explain it is if you and I were doctors, and you aptly said earlier that you're not clinical. I am certainly not clinical. I took my 6 hours of science and ran for the door in college.
Right.
But if you and I were doctors and we were entering the Dallas market uh, as independent physicians, then we are left typically to uh, secure a contract with Blue, with United, with
Hmm.
Aetna, with Cigna. That's going to be 85 to 90% of your business in this market. Those,
Hmm.
what they call the BUCAs, right?
Right.
If you secure a contract with Blue and I secure a contract with Blue, we can't know what each other's being paid. If we actually talk about it and exchange information, then we're breaking the law in the eyes of the FTC and conspiring against the consumer, which at that point is Blue Cross, which is
Hmm.
kind of amazing and ridiculous when you think about it. But I'll stop there before I get myself in trouble. Uh, what a clinically integrated IPA does is they work with disparate groups, disparate physicians, and they say, okay, we're going to collect data, we're going to help you analyze the data in an effort to improve quality and reduce cost. And by doing that, we're afforded an opportunity to collectively negotiate agreements with the
Okay.
payers. So this started probably in the late 90s.
Hmm.
That's when PPN was founded. That's when several other organizations here in town were founded. The promise, if you will, from the payers was that they would take those savings and they would drive higher fee for service rates for members of IPAs. Unfortunately, that never really came to pass. It feels like it was a little bit of um, well, as we're entering football season, we'll say it's a bit of a Heisman move.
Okay.
They went one way and juked the other, but and it was probably advent, if you will, to the emergence of what they call value based care, which I have my own thoughts about, and we can
Hmm.
certainly touch on later. But
Let's do that in a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the reality is we're designed to give doctors access to contracts so that they don't have to hire a lawyer to review the 67-page agreement from United or the 121-page agreement that I reviewed this weekend from Blue Cross
Hmm.
or the agreement for Cigna or Aetna or Scott and White Health Plan. You pick your poison. We probably offer 20 to 25 different health plan agreements that doctors can then choose to opt into. It's a
Okay.
messenger model, so they don't have to opt into anything. We certainly encourage them to opt in, and then we handle their credentialing. So we serve as a delegated credentialing entity, meaning they don't have to worry about keeping their stuff uh, up to date with the payers because we manage that process for them. And then we manage the rosters that are submitted. We manage changes in addresses, TINs, subtractions or additions to the practice in terms of practicing members, all of those things will work with them. Subsequent to that, we will secure or pursue cost savings initiatives. Like we have a relationship with TMLT where folks can get a discount on their malpractice insurance. We have a partner in the insurance space where we can help them get their general liability. We often will explore GPO offerings, things of that nature. And then I'm going to say about 2017, I've only been here just over 4 years, coming up on 4.5 years. But back in 2017, we made a pretty hard and fast pivot into value-based care and can assist practices with limited efforts in value-based care, although that's changing as scale becomes a more important thing in this world.
Well, talk a little bit about what y'all are doing in value-based care, because I'm interested in that.
Sure. So when I first stumbled into the provider side of healthcare back in 2010, we were doing things when I was in Corpus Christi, Texas, that I would call population health or value-based care, but it didn't have that name yet.
Okay.
Right? Quality agreements, medical director agreements, just all kinds of different things to try to create some standardization around the way care was delivered. Over the years, it's morphed into quote unquote value-based care. The idea for PPN participating in that was if we could organize our folks around value-based care principles and help them check the box on certain things, and every program is different, every payer is different, every payer has different motivations for doing this. But if we could help them do it, because a standalone one doc practice with 2 or 3 MAs and maybe a nurse and an office manager, they don't have the bandwidth to dig in and chase down 30 or 40 or 50 patients that they might have to close care gaps on. So we would assist in that world. And early on, we did very well for our members. We delivered very, very impressive returns to the tune of over $4 million for performance in 2019 across multiple products, multiple platforms. Unfortunately, what has happened is, and I say this with love in my heart, the payers don't like to give away money.
Right.
Let's not kid ourselves.
Right.
And so, when they realized they were giving us $4 million, suddenly the goalposts started moving around.
Okay.
Right? And the ability to create returns of that size started to remarkably fall.
Yeah.
So much so that we have, as an organization, removed ourselves from every commercial ACO except Cigna.
Okay.
In large part because in most cases, the payers will require or expect you to take care coordination fees that are subject to clawback. So if you don't hit your metrics, then you have to deliver those dollars back. Well, when you have 10,000 lives at $3 per member per month, that's almost $400,000 that's at risk, even though the work is being performed, right? So, so we had 2, 3, 4 nurses plus a CNO at various points working on those materials or working on those items, but we were funding it ourselves under the premise that we would continue to get bonuses on the flip 18 months after the fact, when frankly most doctors don't realize where the money's coming from, right?
Sure.
We deliver a check in September of this year for work that happened in 23.
Yeah.
They have no idea. And I would tell you now, and when I first started, I was a very big proponent of the shift into ACOs and value-based care and those things. And I still am, as long as you can build scale and as long as you can build the contracts appropriately. In our case, we're not afforded an opportunity because we don't have the scale, and we can't afford to front load $400,000 worth of labor to the payers to then just have it yanked out from under us, and have the doctors not realize any benefit to some of the extra work we were making them do. Right?
Yeah. Okay. And Is PPN, I'm assuming primary care and specialty care?
Yeah, we're 60% specialist, 40% primary care.
Okay.
So that gives us about 250 primary care doctors and call it 450 specialists. We range
Okay.
from neurosurgery to pediatrics. We stretch from Greenville to the east, all the way out to Burleson to the west. We stretch from Gainesville in the north, all the way to Waxahachie in the south.
Okay.
So we cover a huge geographic spread, and really, I think, you've heard me mention a couple times the idea of scale.
Right.
There's been a huge emergence of private equity money into the space of
Yeah.
healthcare, as you well know. There's been an emergence of, or a creation of large integrated systems. The two biggest systems here in town both have well over 2,000 employed physicians now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create that kind of scale, then you can do a lot of things with Medicare, Medicare shared savings, Medicare Advantage, commercial ACOs,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things that I can't really do with my, call it 250 PCPs, of
Sure.
which 100 are pediatricians, which unfortunately the payers don't really care about pediatrics, even though if they were truly focused on reducing the cost of care in the long run, they would 100% focus on pediatrics, because I'm not going to start eating vegetables tomorrow. It's just
Right.
not happening.
Right.
If you fix it a generation from now, you get rid of heart disease, you get rid of obesity, you get rid of all the things that drive up costs today. But the payers are only concerned about the next quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. So you bring up a point of the two large systems in Dallas Fort Worth employing about 2,000 doctors, and you yourself,
Each. Yeah.
each,
Yeah.
and you've got 650 ish plus independent physicians in your group. I get it. That physicians want to stay independent as much as they can, but that is a dying breed, right?
It faces significant challenges. I'd be
Yeah,
lying if I told you otherwise. And
yeah,
and regardless of what people on the coast think, we don't ride our horses to work and tie them up outside.
yeah.
Um, but we do have a streak of independence, and we do
Sure.
have a belief that that our doctors believe. Let me put it that way. I say we. I'm not a doctor, but our doctors believe. They went to school to be a doctor,
Yeah.
go to school to be a business person. They didn't go to school to have 30 or 40% of every claim denied, just under the pretense that maybe they would get tired of fighting and then would just accept a lower payment amount
Hmm.
from the payers. And scale affords you an ability to fight those fights and create a revenue stream that supports fighting those fights, which is
Hmm.
really what it takes in today's environment. So
Yeah.
with the support of my board for the last 2 years, we've been working very diligently to try to create a path forward for independent medicine here in the market. I would tell you that at its core, it's about being financially integrated.
Hmm.
We've got to get out of this space where we've got 46 different EHRs and 200 plus different rev cycle models,
Yeah.
because I've got way too many practices that bill code 1, 2, 3, 4, and too many practices that bill 2, 3, 4, 5. One of them's getting paid, the other's not. And the reality is they're the same specialty.
Sure.
And we've got to standardize our behaviors, our approaches, those things in such a way where we understand where we're getting squeezed and how we're getting squeezed and how to fix it. And then can also have more productive discussions with the payers about the rate at which we're reimbursed.
Hmm.
Because I can tell you that we are significantly below what the integrated systems here in town command from the payers. And it's not sustainable in the long run, because for all doctors, even those that are employed, although they don't feel it quite as acutely,
Hmm.
expenses are going up, revenue is staying static or going down. And there comes a point to where that ship tilts over at that point,
Yeah.
and we've got to find a way to create a more robust revenue stream for our doctors, and then also work on reducing their expenses. But there's they've all been forced to cut and cut and cut. And the premise was value-based care would create that revenue for them that they were missing out on. But it's there's too many conditions.
Sure.
I'll tell you a funny story, and I don't want to turn this into a complaint session because
no, but that's fine.
That's
okay.
My complaints are usually reserved for the back porch, maybe with a drink or something.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a situation with one of the payers in town where it was a value-based care opportunity, and we missed the metric for, I guess it was for 22, right? And one of the metrics that was held against by FPs and IMs was the cost of NICU. Now, if you're an FP or an IM in a busy metropolitan area like Dallas, what happens the first time your patient gets pregnant? You kick them out to the OB. You don't touch that person. You don't see that person. It's very unlikely that you've seen that person for any extended period of time in the last 9, 10, 11 months, right? And then if they go into the hospital and they have a delivery and that child ends up in the NICU for some reason, whatever that reason is, right? In my opinion, that cost cannot hit my FPs or IMs.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to allow my OBs to participate in these programs and treat them like primary care in that regard, then yes, by all means, I'll own that. We will attack it. We'll do what we can, But in this case, I had significant cost hitting people that had no control whatsoever over that cost.
Yeah.
And it appeared to be designed in such a way to make us miss the metric.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the payers at the same time can approach an employer here in town and say, hey, we're working hard. We're trying to reduce your costs. We got an ACO. We're chasing all these different quality measures. Trust us, we're doing what we can.
Yeah.
Fast forward a year when they're talking to the broker or the payer again and the employer, and they say, well, you know what? Your cost went up. The good news is it only went up 8%. It might have gone up 20%, but the ACO helped you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so am I getting that money back? No, I mean, it's going up 8%. We had to give all the profits to the doctors. So they blame the doctors for the achievement of metrics, even though it really is just a situation that lets them drive through rate increases that are maybe a little bit less than they would prefer, but they can cover it easier.
Okay. So besides being financially integrated, what else can be done to help independent physicians stay independent?
Yeah,
I didn't mean to stump you there, Scott.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I think I've spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's another way right now. Because the very nature of, if you're clinically integrated like we are today, we went 3 years without a rate increase from Blue over a window of time in which expenses increased probably at the most remarkable rate they have in a generation.
Sure.
And when the quote unquote new fee schedule came out from Blue, it went up 1.5% over a 3-year window.
Okay.
Right. And everybody's expenses went up more than that. MAs, instead of costing $15 an hour, now cost $25 an hour. You name it. There's a million different ways where it doesn't work. And so the ability to, when you're financially integrated, to then speak in unison, right?
Yeah.
And be able to do the same thing the integrated systems here in town do, probably does, if I had to guess, where, you're going to pay us, or we're going to take our folks and we're going to leave the sandbox. And then it becomes just the kabuki dance, if you will, that the independent physicians have never been able to play, because I can't communicate in that fashion. If I send a note out to everybody and say, hey, I need you to walk away from payer X in 30 days, I can't send that out in writing. At that point, I'm breaking the law.
Sure.
If I call everybody, let's say, and tell them the same thing, they're going to they're going to look at me on the phone and they're going to say, no, that's X% of my daily patient volume. I'm not walking away from that. And so it becomes just a intractable problem.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and you've been a real ray of sunshine so far, Scott. I know, right?
Gosh.
So leave my audience with a few final thoughts in and around the independent space.
So I will tell you that I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I try to stay positive.
I know it
can be challenging. I would tell you that I'm not certain our healthcare system, if you will, gets fixed until the employers really decide to own it, and the employees.
Okay.
And if and when employers and employees decide to own the securing, the provision, the use of their healthcare in a more effective manner, then they're going to quickly realize that independent doctors are some of the best doctors in town, and they're some of the most cost-effective doctors in town because they don't carry the same weight of overhead that large systems do.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about reducing your healthcare spend by 30 or 40 or 50% as an employer, right? You know, the future probably lies in direct to employer contracting for independent physicians.
Yeah.
But the reality of doing that is you got to have unified data, right?
Yeah.
You cannot do direct to employer and truly manage that cost and understand where the cost is hidden if you have 200 different rev cycle systems and 40 plus different EHRs. And all of that is also tied to the idea of cap. Cap is probably coming, you know, like Thrones, winter is coming, right?
Yep.
So,
right.
So it's coming. We better be prepared for it. And I would tell you, you know, I'm putting on my positive hat now. Independent docs will help you get there if we can find a way to work with them, let them maintain their independence, but also deploy what I would call world-class or leading-edge approaches to care in such a way that the cost stays low, right?
Okay.
And,
you
know, there's a way that can benefit systems too. But we're all going to have to work together to get there.
Yeah. I think that's a good final word. Hey, my friend, it's always good to talk to you.
Great to talk to you.
You need to come down to Central Texas because you're not going to catch me back up in Dallas-Fort Worth. I left for a reason, traffic and a lot of other things. So
I pass through occasionally, but not all that often. It used to be that Temple was the place you got hooked on the road. Now it's Waco, but even that's getting a little better.
That is true.
You know, but
it's been great talking to you, Scott. And folks, you know, help me thank Scott Hurst, the president and CEO of Patient Physician Network in Dallas-Fort Worth, for joining us today on I Don't Care with me, Kevin Stevenson. As always, it's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again next week. Take care.